All right, guys, what is up? Welcome into another episode of the Dog Pound podcast. We are doing some movie reviews to kind of start things off, hopefully building a little bit of the hype. And I got two special guests with me. When we traveled around the country, bringing you guys cornhole content, every week we would talk about Game of Thrones. And I'm very honored to have Athena Delgado and Michael Gonzalez on the podcast with me. Welcome on, guys.
Thank you. Wally.
Oh, man. Hopefully, is my internet? Oh, my gosh. A great start. All right. So hopefully we can get through this without any issues. I am kind of putting my computer to the test here. So the way we're going to break this down is we're going to start things off with the Night of the Seven Kingdoms. It's 6 episodes long, and thankfully they're not very long episodes. So I think it's going to be fun for you guys to kind of follow along on the podcast and then go watch them real quick and then come back the next day and you'll still have time to be caught up for the next one. So Athena and Michael, we kind of have a discussion that we need to address right here on the first episode. How do we want to handle this? Athena has obviously read every book that there is, right, for Game of Thrones. Michael, Not so much, right?
No, negative.
Okay, so do we want to keep this spoiler free or do we not really care about spoilers? Because personally, I don't care about spoilers. I want to stay interested in it. But I think for the viewers, they might have a problem with it. But Michael, what say you?
I also don't care about spoilers. Interesting enough, like when it comes to sports, I hate spoilers. But when it comes to, shows and staying engaged and keeping it interesting, yeah, I'm good.
Okay, Athena?
I mean, I'm all for spoilers. The problem going between books and the shows is sometimes you don't realize you're spoiling something until you do.
Okay, so with that being said, I think we're going to basically just have casual conversations, and if it comes out, it comes out. So let that be the warning to anybody watching these podcasts. If you're the type of person that doesn't want to get spoiled by something in the books or something from a different series that you haven't watched yet, then by all means, feel free to find something else to watch, or we'll probably do our best to warn you if something comes up that might be a spoiler. So I don't think this is a spoiler, but for example, spoiler alert, this is taking place 100 years before Game of Thrones and 100 years after the House of the Dragons. So it's kind of right in between. So personally, I highly recommend watching both of those shows. I think Michael and Athena are on the same page there.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So basically, I'm doing this podcast because Jake Brannon has to watch Game of Thrones. That's the reason that we want to get him doing it, because he hasn't seen a single season yet. And for anyone out there that wants to start Game of Thrones, it does start a little slow. So give it an entire season. And if you're still not hooked by the end of the first season, hey, we tried. But I'm telling you, it is 100% worth it. So without further ado, is now my camera decides you start following me around the room, which is cool. We're gonna get right into it. So episode 1, Night of the Seven Kingdoms, titled The Hedge Knight. We start off getting introduced to Duncan the Tall, or at this time he's just called Duncan, and he is burying his knight, Sir Arland. Now, one thing that I find interesting in this scene is that Dunk is always kind of like weighing what's right and wrong, as he's like justifying to himself, I don't want to bury you with your sword because it's a perfectly good sword, and like this might be some value, you know what I mean? But then he also, so he's kind of like teetering on that gray area there, but then he doesn't want to sell the horses because the horses, are sentimental to him and to Sir Arland. So Dunk basically buries Sir Arland, and then he makes his way to an inn, and he's thinking about joining an attorney. But before he does, we hear the epic Game of Thrones soundtrack, letting you know this is a Game of Thrones show, and then literally shits all over it. So I think that is basically setting the tone for this show. Spoiler alert, I guess, in all 6 episodes, there is some type of bodily fluids flying around this entire thing. So, Michael, what do you think about the intro selection for Game of Thrones and Night of the Seven Kingdoms?
Yeah, that one caught me off guard right away. I was like, oh, I got to pay attention. This is catching on quick. And so, that one caught me off guard. It kind of set the tone for the start of the season for sure.
Now, Athena, we're used to having like these long intros that almost in a way tell themselves a story. You know, we have the blood trail, we have the what do they call it, the tapestry, we have the map. But in this one, we get none of that. It's literally just a title screen and then boom, right in the show. So do you feel like Night of the Seven Kingdoms needed something at the beginning, or do you like how it is?
I hate how it starts. I wish it had more, like it feels like you're watching Game of Thrones, but it feels like something totally different. And I like how in every episode in, you know, the standard Game of Thrones did tell sort of a story. You get a little bit of history without realizing it. And as every new episode unlocks either an area or a storyline, you watch it magically, you know, reveal itself. And then with this one, I was like, what is this? Why?
So
I did not like it.
So I listen to the podcast while I'm at work and driving to the work as far as like a book on tape. I don't really know how big is this book, The Hedge Knight. Is it like a long book like we get in Game of Thrones, or is it like just a quick little novella, or what are we looking at here?
I mean, it's not very long, but it's not
short. The reason I ask is because do you think it's long enough to have these different maps getting unlocked in an intro scene?
I think because it kind of branches off other important parts of the original, like the story, that it should kind of start you somewhere so that you know where you are in that timeline, because it's, you know, in Game of Thrones, there's so many different parts and eras and stories that they tell within a story. And I feel like they could have done something. So you're like, okay, this is where we're starting. But then, I don't know. I think they could have done way better with the intro. I was severely disappointed in it. I was not happy.
All right. Well, I've been messing with AI, so maybe I can make you an AI Night of the Seven Kingdoms intro or something. But
love that.
All right. So we head away from the tree where Sir Arlen is buried, and we head right towards this inn where we get introduced to Egg right away. There isn't much waiting for this. Egg is basically just at an inn chilling, and Duncan walks up and thinks he's an inn or a stable boy, and basically tells him to take care of the horses. And right away, we kind of get this like crisp, well-spoken Egg that, you know, so we already get a hint right away that something's up with this little boy. But I like these moments in this show where, you know, the innkeeper basically takes the rest of this drink and then pours Dunk's drink in it right away and just hands it to Dunk. Like, there's no sanitation at all. They're not going to get that A outside their window from the health code. But I don't know. It's kind of interesting because in Game of Thrones, you kind of think a little bit of gory fighting, a bunch of storytelling stuff like that. But when I'm searching for this on my stream box, it comes up as a comedy. So how do you feel that as a labeling, guys? You think it is an actual comedy, or do you feel like it's a mystery or drama, or what?
I feel like with this one, they did give a comedy vibe. I didn't realize it was listed that way, but looking back after you say that, I can definitely feel that. And then, someone like me watching it, I'm probably the type of person they want watching the show, because it took me a while to catch on to this whole Egg being who he is and whatnot. And I think that, that's what they want, that type of viewer who they can stream along through the story. And I'm not someone that knew where this fit. I'd watched House of Dragon. I knew that was 100 years or, a couple hundred years before. I didn't know yet where this fit going into it. And so it was good. I think I'm the type of person they want to drag along.
Okay, cool. I like to hear that because I kind of knew a little bit, but let's take a quick look at our first clip, and hopefully these work out well because they took me hours to do. So if they don't work, I might cry a little bit on the pod, but here we go. Our first look at Dunk meeting Egg.
Oi!
My lord.
You thief!
I did not mean to offend you.
Take that armor off you, now. Be glad Thunder didn't kick you in that fool head of yours. He's a war horse, not a boy's pony.
I could ride him as well as you.
Close your insolent mouth. I'm a knight, I'll have you know.
You don't look to be a knight.
What, all knights look the same, do they?
No, but they don't look like you either.
All right, so hopefully you guys saw that and heard that okay?
Yep, that's perfect.
All right, sweet, cool. Yeah, so there we go. Dunk meeting Egg, and you can kind of see he's like already talking down to him a little bit. He's like, "You're not a knight," but then Dunk tries to stand there, even though he's tall. He tries to make himself a little bit taller and prouder. But I guess I don't know. I guess this could be a spoiler section right here. I don't know, Athena. Do we get the impression that Dunk has been knighted, because it seems like he's really a shitty knight? I mean, he looks like junk. He's questioning stealing a horse and questioning stealing a sword or something like that. I mean, he just flat out lies, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it gives a different feelings. Like the book version, you can tell that he's sort of like, he's super optimistic is what it is, and it almost makes him not airheady, but that's kind of what it feels. It's like he knows it's his job, or wants it so badly to be his job, that he is almost putting it out into the universe that this is what it is. So he's thinking and acting what he thinks a knight is supposed to think and act like, based off of what he's seen, but also never actually having, like, he wasn't trained. He wasn't technically knightly trained in a way. And it was just, it's weird. Like the whole dynamic's interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the cool things too, is that we're supposed to question this stuff. And Michael, I want to ask you, do you get the impression the entire time that you're supposed to be asking yourself, was Sir Arlen a knight, and is Dunk even knighted by him to begin with?
Yeah, I think, like you said, Athena, did feel like he's like naive to other people's situations. And so that does make me think like, doesn't have any experience or training, and he's just kind of like flying through this. So I did actually start to kind of question that early. Like, does he actually know what he's doing? Is he a knight? And, is he supposed to be on this journey?
Yeah, a lot of question marks early on, so I like it. So we're going to basically go from that inn down to where the tournament is in Ashford. Is it Ashford Meadows or Ashford? What's the name? Is it Ashford, Athena?
Ashford. Yeah.
Ashford. Okay. So anyway, Ashford is where they're heading to, and right away, it just looks like Dunk doesn't belong anywhere. He's getting it from the innkeeper, and then he meets these two, I guess, prostitutes, and they're kind of talking down on him too. Basically saying that, what's a hedge knight? It's a knight, only a little bit sadder. So he's getting grief from everywhere that he goes. We are introduced right away to what knights look like. They're already there. They're training. We see the Fossaways, which are the Apple family. They're beating the crap out of each other, and they're cracking apple jokes like they're trying to keep the doctor away. One's a bad apple, the other one's trying to be a good apple and stuff like that. So he's like, that's a long sword, right? All right, let's fight. And Duncan's like almost afraid to fight because of one, either he's too much of a badass, or two, he doesn't want to make himself look like a fool right away. So Michael, real quick before we get into our next clip, let me ask you, do you think that he is almost running a little bit of stolen valor here, where he's trying to use his size as an advantage to make himself look like a better knight than he actually is?
Yeah, I was actually getting the impression the other way. What you were saying is maybe he is actually really a badass, and he didn't want to bring that out, or didn't want to hurt somebody type thing. That's kind of where when I was watching this episode, I was thinking like, he actually doesn't know his own strength.
Yeah, I can see that too. And I like that aspect that we don't know much about him. And quite frankly, nobody else does either. So we leave there. They go to a puppet show where he immediately falls in love with this girl. And then he's cowering away the second they make eye contact, which I can relate to quite a bit. You know what I'm saying? So anytime that I see a pretty girl, eye contact, nope, I'm out. Let's go ahead and run away from that. And then the next, I guess, comfort place for a guy like us is to be in a tent full of food, where we meet my favorite character, which is Lionel Baratheon. And we'll see pretty much in this next clip why, as Lionel Baratheon is basically just finally out of the house, and he gets to play this super king, or whatever you want to call it, this noble person, but then he just clearly doesn't know how to act. So let's take a look at that.
You ever been punched in the face before? I beg your pardon, Sir Lion? Big men get punched more than little men. Did you know that?
No, but I believe it.
That why you slouch? So you don't get punched.
I don't slouch.
Oh, you've been cowering all evening like a maiden on her wedding night. I meant no disrespect, sir, honestly. Where I grew up, you learn to go unnoticed is all.
The 7 above gave you tallness, so be tall.
So shortly after that, he says basically, or else I'll burn you or drown you, or I don't know, what do they do to punish people? So he's trying to put on this little facade that he's a hard ass, but then he doesn't know how to do it. So Athena, tell us a little bit about Lionel.
Oh God.
What do the books have to say about him?
His demeanor is actually pretty darn close to how the show is, like just how he acts, and I'm trying to think of what we learn later on that's not in episode 1 about him. But I think I don't know. I think he's always trying to, he is, and that's really all it is. But it's interesting though, because even though he seems to be there to have a good time and a party, he knows so much more than what meets the eye. Like he's that kind of person that like shows up somewhere, everyone's like telling him everything. He knows everything that's going on. He can kind of like shit on everyone in a way, laugh about it, but he's got ammunition on everybody because he is such a party animal. He's at the place that everyone goes to just say what they want. So he's kind of like I think he's like the secret gossiper. In a way, because he knows everything that's happening.
I like it.
He's trouble at the same time.
Okay, they finish off their conversation by Lionel basically laughing at the fact that Dunk mentions, "Oh, if I lose, I can't even afford to buy back my armor or my horse." So basically, if you lose in these competitions, you lose your horse, your armor, your sword, you lose everything, and you have to buy it back. And that's the reward for the other knight winning that battle. But Duncan is like, man, I can't afford to do this. I can't afford to win. He lied to the gameskeeper earlier. He's like, I don't plan on losing. But, he basically tries to get comfort from Lionel. Like, can you imagine what that's like? And Lionel says, no, that's asinine that anybody would enter a tournament and not be able to do that. So it's interesting. And then basically he goes back to his campsite where he finds Egg was able to catch up with him and basically make camp underneath a tree, kind of honoring Sir Arlen's, dwelling. And basically Egg has got it all nice and clean. He vacuumed the carpet and he washed the clothes in the creek and he cooked him some fish. And Duncan's getting back there. He's kind of like, yeah, this ain't bad, but like, you're not supposed to be stalking me, bro. So eventually Egg convinces him to take him on board. And then he kind of outsmarts him a little bit here at the end by saying all the other knights are in their silk tents and they're not going to be able to look up and see this shooting star, which brings luck. And Duncan thinks he's the only one who has the luck. So there it is. That's episode number 1. Michael, what do you think about episode number 1 as a whole?
Yeah, as a whole, it was good. Once they got into that tent scene, I kind of started feeling the Game of Thrones vibes there. And then I really like you just said, how they closed it off. You saw their friendship clicked right there at the end. And Egg kind of outsmarted Dunk. And then you saw Dunk kind of thought, oh yeah, they all are in their tent. So this is a shooting star for me. And that kind of like sealed the deal in their friendship, I feel like. And really, it was a good way to end episode 1.
I like it. So one thing that Knight of the Seven Kingdoms did for me that Game of Thrones did not do was you got this character development right away. In Game of Thrones, it almost took you a few episodes to figure out who the Starks were, who the Baratheons were, who the Lannisters were. But in the Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, we know right away. Like, we know who Lionel is. We know who Dunk is. We know we know the type of person that Egg is. So, Athena, what did you think about episode number 1 as a whole?
I thought it was good. It was very, very different. So I think it was almost difficult to, like, it was a lot funnier than like the seriousness behind it. And I thought that there were some moments that it leaned a little too playful compared to kind of what the book character is. So they sort of, like in the book, he's the joke without realizing he's the joke. Like, he's just super oblivious to it. And I think they make it very obvious. But I feel like in the show, if you didn't read the book, you kind of have to make it obvious that everyone around you is kind of like, who is this guy sort of deal, to make you understand, especially if you didn't read the book portion. I was hoping that there would be fewer obvious puns. I thought it was very punny in some areas, but I think it was good. It almost kind of brought it to, it felt like going to a Renaissance fair.
Okay.
It's the best way I can put it, at least for me personally. That's what it felt like. It was just like, I don't know. It was one of those things. Like, it took me a minute. The first episode, I was like, I don't know how I fully feel, but I'm committed. We're going to watch this whole thing.
All right. Good to hear. Good to hear. All right. So this is one thing I did not tell you guys about, but we're going to do this for every episode. And we're going to continue doing this on the Dog Pound podcast going forward. So what we're going to do is we're going to throw them a bone. And the question is, how many bones are we going to throw the Night of the Seven Kingdoms? Episode 1, the Hedge Knight, with 1 being the worst and 5 being the best. You can give half bones if you want. I'll start with Athena, who was kind of questionable. Athena, how many bones you giving the Hedge Knight?
2.
2 out of 5 bones. Okay. Michael, how many bones say you?
I'm going to go with 3. I liked how they really tied the friendship up quickly at the end of the episode. So that got me locked in.
Okay. So there we go. 5 out of 10 bones for episode number 1, the Hedge Knight. That's going to wrap up our first episode. We are going to probably post these once a day. So if you enjoyed this one, come back tomorrow. We are going to get right into episode number 2. We'll see you guys in a bit.